Hello, everyone. Today we have Jon Andersen with us from Jon Andersen Coaching, amazing coach that works on mindset as well as physical and has some amazing programs and has been doing this for a really long time. I mean, look at the man. It is very evident. So we are going to hear a bit about his business, his story, and how he got there. Of course, we go into the growth and where he's going from here and lessons for anyone who's looking to get into this sphere of life and this career path. And of course, my fun addition, stay tuned. Jon is going to ask me a question. We're going to see what it is. So, Jon, take it away. Tell us about your business.
Well, my business is really just a positive side effect of my journey in my life. To go back, you looking at me now, what you wouldn't know if we went far enough back in time is that I was a challenged little guy. I still have many of the challenges. I manage them today. Whopping learning disability. Because of that, I'm slow, let's be honest. In those days, they didn't really figure out what they just always slow, put them over. And so I was in the classes with, kids with that weren't going to lead normal lives. And there was a handful of us in there. So anyway, that put me in a prime position to get picked on, which happened a lot. And then I ran to food for comfort. So then I developed basically I was fat and ran to food for comfort, which then developed a whole nother series of problems. And so really when it comes down to it, my life the early part of my life is what set me up for the rest of my life. I didn't know it at the time, but what I just described, keep in mind, there are plenty of details that we could go into, getting stacked in the lockers, getting put up, in garbage cans, people, older bullies spitting on my face in the bus, you name it, it was happening. But I thank my lucky stars that all of that happened, because without that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Perfect example. With a whopping learning disability, reading was a real challenge for me. And I can read today, but at the same time, I still have some comprehension issues. I got a really important letter. I would read it, then I would take it to my wife or one of daughters, ask them to read it to me so that I could make sure that I didn't miss something. So anyway, but back then, it was a little different. Well, all those challenges really allowed me to develop me. And what I mean by that is this. I had a very difficult time doing things of any nature like everyone else. I had to find a way to do it my way. Hands down, the biggest blessing of my life. Cannot argue. It's just, I became an amazing problem solver because my life was filled with problems and I couldn't just follow the handbook that society had given all the other kids. I had to figure out, how am I going to deal with this? And so because of that, started early, I became really good at solving problems. Now, because of the challenges that I had, I was also, the joke I make, but it's the truth, I was just dumb enough to believe I could do what I wanted to do. I was being told I couldn't from the beginning. Well, you hear you can't enough, people are telling you can't. It just kind of said at some point you don't hear it anymore. You just decide that you're going to try to do what you want to do. So I also really became one with facing fear and recognizing that failure was just part of my existence, not understanding at the time that failure is the front door to success, that you are not going to be successful without failing and failing a lot. So as a youngster, I'm not even old enough to drive yet. And I've developed pretty good problem solving set of skills. I've, managed dealing with fear, and I've basically accepted failure, which is a pretty massive skill set for a youngster. And I didn't really understand what I had, and looking back, I'd accomplished so much. It just didn't register with what in society's terms, well, you haven't accomplished anything because you're not fitting into the way things are supposed to be going. Well, thank God that was the case, because now, looking back, my life is nothing like everyone else's, and thank God, because I have been, and I say this, here's a perfect example. I've been a I've been three different pro careers. So I basically was first a pro strongman, then a pro wrestler in Japan, actually international, all over the world, and then a pro bodybuilder, right? And my favorite ever, even with those three things, my favorites, oh, I forget that. I've got a wonderful wife, three beautiful daughters. I've got grandson. But one of the favorite things that I love of all the successes that I've had, I've never, ever collected paycheck as an adult. I've never had a job because I knew what I wanted to do and I went after it, and I had the problem solving skills. I had the ability to, look into the eyes of fear and keep pushing forward. And I had the tenacity to accept that failure was part of the process without turning and running the other way, which is what most people can. So that right there, this is the moment where I want to tell anybody listening that if you think that you're challenging the challenges or the hard parts of your life were happening to you, they're happening for you. Life happens for you, not to you. And it's a perspective thing. I mean, I could be the guy that says, I work at 7-Eleven. Not, forgive me if any of you work 7-Eleven, my apologies. I'm not trying to downplay it, but I'm saying if I could be the guy that say, I have this shitty job, so to speak, because of all the problems I had as a kid. Or I can say, I got a goddamn amazing life because of all the problems I had as a kid. And it helped me develop the skills that I needed to have the life that I choose. I mean, as a little guy, I knew that I wanted to be a big, strong dude. I had no idea how I was going to make money with it. But normally when you're 12, you don't really think of it. Well, if God had come down and said, hey, cut off one of your fingers and you could be a pro strongman. Boom, I'd have cut off one of my fingers. He'd come back and said, hey, guess what? Cut off another one and you can be a pro wrestler. Bam, I'd have cut another one. He'd come back and said, do over the pro body. I'd have two fingers on one. I'd have cut three of my fingers off because that's basically, it was what I wanted to do. I mean, I didn't really have those three specifics. I just knew that I wanted to be this big, strong guy and I wanted to somehow make a living doing so. And I did that times three. I did it in three different internationally recognized arenas because of all of the challenges that I had as a youngster, and I developed the skills to get through it. So basically what I'm saying is I'm at a better version of myself on the other side of every challenge. And because of that, now I've solved, obviously first on myself, but once you learn to solve a problem for yourself and you can show other people how you did it, and it starts to work for them. And lots of people follow that lead and then it happens and it works for tons of people. Then you gain a lot of credibility that, hey, you know what? I have a skill set that I can teach you to solve your set of problems. And that's how my business basically took shape. It's like,
how did you narrow that down? Because you learned this, it sounds like in many ways, very organically. You were
100%.
like, damn, this is what I've learned through life. How did you then create something that was teachable to bring those learnings and that power in the world to others?
Well, when it came, my whole process from the time I was young was trial and error. And the trial and error was just really efficient because, like I said, I wasn't afraid. I knew failure was going to happen. I was not afraid to pursue fear. And, through constantly working forward, my problem solving skills kept getting better and better and better. And just by the organic nature of me constantly moving forward in my own life. And then I set these goals that were very big that I basically I was chasing down goals that people told me it was never going to happen. And I was like, well, okay, let's see what happens. I've been told I can't my whole life, but I'm going to try and I'm going to see what happens. And so as I went through my life and I achieved different things and climbed to new heights, I was always basically practicing, learning, and developing my skill set. Like in my business, the nutrition protocol that I have is not something you're going to find anywhere. It's something I developed on myself, and I had such massive results. people around me like, hey, what are you doing? Well, this is what. Okay, great. I'm going to try. So they would try. I would show them what I was doing. It would work for them. Well, next thing you know, if something works really well, that person's going to tell someone else, and that person's going to, next thing you know, you got a lot of people asking for the information you have. And really what it comes down to is, I'm a purveyor, a teacher of information. And then more importantly is my problem solving skills then really help that information that I need to not only give to somebody, but help them apply it into their specific life or their specific circumstances. So my skill sets that I developed through my own journey, and keep in mind, it was developing my own journey in my own life and different circumstances as I traveled. So, I mean, I've made all of this work in just about every circumstance there is. And now I know how to teach it to others. So I guess kind of to answer your question, it was the trial and error process and my development of what I do really happened quickly because the skills I had developed so young, and I got my skills became so efficient, and I was able to make so much progress with the development of my system, which then translated so easily to others. And when it comes down to it, the bigger problem that you solve for people, the more in demand you're going to be. And one of the things in my system that I did with, I was a fat little guy. So one of the problems I solved for myself is, how do I not be a fat son of a bitch? How do I be a big, strong guy, not fat? Well, I developed system of eating, and I had a massive overeating problem. And most people that are overweight, they like to eat. The majority of people that are overweight have tried to lose weight by starving themselves. Not a very good way to live. Suffering, anybody can suffer for a period of time, but you're not going to suffer for the next 4 decades. So I develop a system of eating where someone literally, like if someone comes to me, they want to lose weight, I'm going to give them a structure to what they're supposed to follow with the diet I create for them. Number one, they can never be hungry. Number two, they can never be full. So you're going to live in a state of being comfortable, and you're going to lose body fat. For someone to think, I don't ever have to be hungry, I'm going to lose body fat, that doesn't make sense until it works.
Right.
And then and that's the biggest challenge I have in the first week when I show people what they're supposed to do. They're like, I'm going to get fatter. And I say, you just give me 7 days. It's pretty crazy because it's just it's a different philosophy coming from a different angle. It's a whole nother show if I was going to try to explain that. But the bottom line is I've developed systems that are really, really efficient at changing people's lives physically, mentally. And when it comes down to it, once you connect the physical and the mental, it goes to the third layer, which is the spiritual part. And now this is who you are. You're a changed person. You're not just doing ABC. You have become.
That's exactly it. And so that's the physical side. For the mental side, what does that look like?
Well, that was definitely an interesting journey because, with the challenges that I had, it was like, I guess the easiest way to put it would be that I was constantly riddled with anxiety because I woke up every day wondering what type of, I don't sound like a victim when I say this, but when I was little, I would think to myself, what terrible stuff's going to happen to me today? It's because that was the world I lived in, and at the time I was a victim because I didn't really understand what was going on. I hadn't really developed skill set to realize that I was actually being given a gift. But I lived a pretty good period of time, a decade or more, really always kind of worrying about what was going to happen. Well, then as I started to realize, oh, this is what's going on and I know where I need to go, and I started to realize there was a lot of distance for me to cover. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I somehow stumbled across the way that the human brain was designed. And basically the brain was designed, go back in time, thousands of years ago, whatever your belief is, you can't argue that the human was made thousands of years, designed thousands of years ago, when the number one concern for a human being was to survive today. And if you did that, you were in good shape. So our brains were literally designed and programmed to scan our surroundings and pick out the problems and the challenges, because at that time, those problems and challenges might be trying to eat us for lunch. And so without that mechanism, we weren't going to survive for the day. Well, our world has totally changed. Our challenges and problems are not going to eat us for lunch, but our brain doesn't know the difference. And so when I started to realize, okay, so my brain is programmed to pick out all the problems, and I live in all sorts of problems. I'm just getting a double whammy here, And so that's when I kind of started to, and at that point I discovered weightlifting, and I was lifting weights, and I hear people talk about power of the mind. And so I was starting to slowly connect these dots. And then as my journey continued, I basically realized that the brain is like a hardware. It's a computer. It's hardware, right? The actual thoughts that go through our head, that's the software, right? And so our brains were developed with the software put in to look for all the problems. So that's when I realized, okay, I need to somehow reprogram the way that my brain looks at my life, because as I started to develop and things started to change for me, I was still kind of riddled with anxiety. And I started to realize, life is getting a lot better, but I'm still acting like I was when things were really terrible. And that's when I started to realize, okay, goodness, I can look at these things that are really developing for me, and man, I feel good. And I see things different. And then, my brain would just, because it's default, would go back over here, and I would look at all these things that, problems. And in many cases, these problems never even come to reality. Most of the problems in the human brain live in there. They don't actually come true. It's write a list of 10 things you're worried is going to go wrong. Maybe 2 of them happen, So again, I started connecting these dots, and I was like, whoa, okay. So from there, I developed literally a daily system of reprogramming the computer, the mind.
Sure.
And I'm big on habits and habit stacking, because as I developed, I started to realize that, okay, each day is like a 24-hour loop of time. And if you have created enough good habits within that loop, you're going to make a pretty big step forward. And every time you create another good loop, you're making another step forward. And when it comes down to it, many people, their loop happens and they never make progress. And if anything, they might even slide back a little bit. It's because their habits, the way they live inside that daily loop, doesn't actually allow them to step forward. So I started to realize, okay, I need to make sure that I have these elements in my life that every day when they happen, I develop a little bit more. And I'm talking about everything from physically to mentally. I just wanted to know that the way that I chose, the activities that I chose to do, the way that I would think, the way that I would perceive, my perception allowed me to continue to move forward to what I was trying to do. Because I was always, I'd always had pretty lofty goals, because, I was dumb enough to believe I could do it. And when I did the first one, I thought, well, shit, I'm going to do another one. And so anyway, long and short of it, to answer your question, the development of the mentality of how I can shape someone's mind to see totally different reality has to do with reprogramming the software that's basically put into their brains. It's almost like, when you get a computer, it's got default software. And as humans, we all have the same default software, and it controls our realities. I mean, if you control your thoughts, you control the quality of your thoughts, you control the quality of your life. You have terrible thoughts, you're going to have, a pretty, I don't say terrible life, but you know what I'm saying. If you're constantly thinking poor thoughts and terrible things, your life's going to be reflective of that. If you see the glass as half full rather than half empty, your perception of things around you is so much different. You're going to end up progressing. When I say progressing, I really want people to understand that we're not really talking about income. We're not talking about any one thing. It's how we develop as a person. We all have our own definition of success. Some people's definition of success has to do with, things over here, and another person's is over here. Sometimes it's a combination, but everybody's definition is different. And when your perception is set where it should be with a new default program, you're going to develop into your definition of success much more efficiently. And the best part about it is my clients develop past what they thought was possible.
Right.
And that's really what I'm shooting. I call that my holy shits. I always make the joke in the beginning. I tell them, I want my holy shits. They're like, what are your holy shits? I said, well, when you start saying, holy shit, I didn't know I could wake up feeling this good. Or holy shit, I didn't know I could not have to be hungry and I could end up, losing pant sizes. All the things that they can't believe are happening are holy shit moments. And when it comes down to it, as a coach, my job is to help people reach the potential that is actually possible for them, which is always beyond what they think. Because people will come to me and say, I want to do this. And I'm totally good. I let them, this is what you want. But in my mind, I'm thinking, we're going to go way beyond. And that's, for me, that's where my job is really cool. When I change someone's life to the point where they can't believe they have achieved what they've achieved in all areas of life. Because I don't just coach in one area. If someone comes to me and says, I want to do this and I don't care about that, well, I'm not the guy for you. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And we're going to take that one thing and we're going to translate it through everything. And if that's something you don't want to do, then, I don't coach someone who wants to choose to be lopsided in terms of their existence. So
That's amazing.
anyway, yes.
No, that is phenomenal. And for me, like, my business is Support to Thrive. So for me, it's the holistic approach is always the best approach. That's the only way you're going to get things done. And I completely love that you stand for that. And people who are not in that space, you're like, I'm not the right person for you. And there's
Yeah.
people who are 100% like want the holistic everything sort of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those are my people.
And a lot of times people will come and they'll say, I mean, granted, a lot of times people say, I want to do this. And a lot of times they just don't know. I say, okay, if we do this and this also happens, is that a problem? Oh, no, I would love for that. They just don't understand that if they're coached properly, it'll all happen at the same time.
Yes.
But then I'll get the guy that'll say, I want to get in shape for a cruise. And I'll say, okay, well, when the cruise is over, is that just the first marker in your journey? So when the cruise is over, we go to here to here. No, I just want to get in shape for the cruise. That's the guy that is too close-minded for me to work. So because many people, they just don't understand that, we can take that forward progression and translate it to all areas of their life.
Yeah. And goal-wise for you, you're a big goal setter and you're a big dreamer and you make them happen. What are some of your upcoming goals that you're striving towards?
Well, I think, when it comes down to it, I mean, I really, at this point, I'm 52 now. And, I was actually told by, many, many people that had influence over me along the way that there was going to be a certain point in my journey where giving back and helping other people was going to be more satisfying than what I did by focusing on myself. And I'm definitely at that point to where it's like, man, when I had a conversation with a client this morning and, he's basically right in the middle of our time together. He went through a pretty big setback with some relationship stuff. And so we really leaned on some of the stuff that we're working on together. And he was just telling me how much more efficient, how much better he's feeling getting through this stuff. Because, most people have been through more than one heartbreak, and so you do have some level of comparison. So I guess, the idea of helping people is really, really, close to my heart now. And I've always focused on changing the lives of my clients. But now I've really kind of added to that. Now what I want to do is I want to continue to do that, which I'm doing well with that, but I want to grow my company as a whole because I want a bigger team, because now I'm really focused on changing the lives of my team. And I can do that in an even more dramatic fashion, meaning when people are like, my team members are like, man, I this is a job. I can't believe this is what I do. and they're happy doing it, and they're love to be a part of the purpose. And so I want to grow the company so we can obviously serve more people and change clients' lives, but I can also have a bigger team that can experience what my current team is experiencing. So it's pretty crazy how when you really start doing things for others, it seems like that's when the momentum really starts to take shape.
That's it. And
Yeah.
the team that like that's so valuable. Like you're changing their lives and then they change more lives, and I love how the impact just keeps growing.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about it is like, the people have this idea that, like I said, have never had a job as an adult. And because a job for many people is kind of a bad word. It's like, oh, it's my job. And when people have jobs, they're like excited to do their job. That not many people get to have that. And because of, my journey, I've always been excited to do what I do every day. And so I'm really, really passionate about sharing that with more people. So yes, they'll have a job working within my company as my team, but if it's really, really happening the way it should, which it is in my company currently as we grow, they don't look at it as a job. They're here for a purpose, not for the money. And they start to realize too, I'm doing this because it feels good, and the money it's just a positive side effect.
Right. And that is great advice, which rolls into, is there any other great advice that you would give people other than just coming to work with you, but for others excited about getting into this career path? What's other advice you would give to them?
Well, you know, it's a great question. And here's the thing, the advice that I would, the advice that I would give, it's going to be applicable to so many different areas of life. You just got to kind of realize that it's almost like there's a few universal laws. And if you can kind of get a grip on these and accept them and realize that, you know, yes, they're challenging, but the challenges are what allow you to really, really get where you want to go in terms of fulfillment and accomplishment and everything else. And the first thing is you have to pursue failure. If you run from failure, I hate to say guarantee, but you're going to be hard pressed to find yourself in the place that you want to be fulfilled, because overcoming adversity is a huge part of fulfillment. And when you can actually learn to pursue it, are you running to it or are you running from it? And now failure and fear kind of go hand in hand, because usually fear is kind of the precursor, because failure's there. Oh God, if I do that, I might fail. And then you start to think about, the fear of failing. And now here's really where the underlayment of this piece of advice is. Most people are going to avoid failure, and fear, of course, too, but failure primarily. They're more worried about what people are going to say or think because they failed, rather than the failure itself. And so if you can really wrap your brain around the idea that failure is the gateway to success. And it's the people who have had success, the people that you're trying to emulate, or the people that you're trying to join their party, so to speak. When you fail, they're going to be the first ones to come and pick you up, pat you on the butt, and tell you to do it again. It's the people that are too, excuse my language, too chicken shit to give it a shot themselves. They're the ones that are going to talk all that smack. And they're going to be the ones that tell you you can't. And so just remember, the people that are going to talk the smack, really don't care what they think anyway. So the advice is simple: run to it. Don't run from it. And if you can do that with failure and a little fear wrapped in there, you're going to find yourself, ultimately, you're going to find yourself fulfilled. You're going to find yourself happy. You're going to find yourself with all the things that you're looking for, because it's all on the other side of a series of failures. Yeah, 100%. 100%. The more you fail, the more you understand about what you're doing, about yourself. It's a learning experience. It's testing, it's learning, it's all the above.
That's amazing. And last piece, what's your question for me today?
I like it. All right. So the question for you would be, if you could jump into a time capsule and you could go back in time, but you could only go to one day, you could see yourself and you could ask yourself one or give yourself one piece of advice. So the question is, how far back in time do you go? How old are you? What are you doing? And what do you tell yourself?
Oh, see, I asked these questions. Cool. To probably when I was 10, it's something around people leave your life, but there's always amazing ones that will come back in. That no matter who goes out, there's phenomenal people that will keep coming in and that are out there in the world to keep coming into that space.
Do I get a second question added on to your answer?
I mean, you asked so nicely. So yes.
So clearly a very specific piece of advice that must be matched up to a specific circumstance or event.
Yes.
What was that?
The event was my birth mother because I went from joint custody with my grandparents and my birth mother to my grandparents adopting me. And not long after that, my birth mother moved a few hours away and left my life. And my story about her went from I had two mothers to I only had one. And there was that whole people leave your life and it's terrible. And that means that I'm not good enough. And all of those series of thoughts and feelings along with it. So, yeah.
Well, let me jump on this bandwagon with you if you
Oh, I
don't
like
mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a very similar circumstance. So I didn't understand all of this until later in life, but very similar. So my blood father
Mm,
found out that my mom was pregnant, basically gave her a choice, him or me. Either you get rid of him or you're getting rid of me. And so she thought, well, he won't, once the baby's here, he won't actually leave. So she basically had the child, which was me. And then he left. So basically there was an earlier, the first chunk of my life, I didn't really have, he poked his head in once in a while. I didn't really have a father when I started life. But because of that, my mom ended up meeting this amazing man who became my stepfather. And without him, I wouldn't be me. So had my real father stuck around, I don't know where I would be, but I wouldn't be here.
that's exactly.
And so I look at the situation that I had as 100% a blessing. And my story with that is thank God.
I 1000% agree. And you never know. That's the interesting piece about life and going through life. And there's always a moment of choice, and you never know what path something will lead you down. Exciting.
And to the listeners that are hearing us talk, one of the things I think we can both agree on, when you're going through it, you don't understand and you're trying to understand why, and it's almost impossible. But enough time passes and you look back, you can clearly connect the dots on why things happen the way they did. I always love to remind people that, embrace the challenges, embrace the problems, because it's just a matter of time before you realize how those are going to serve. But you're usually not going to figure it out as you're moving forward. You'll connect the dots when you look back.
So true. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jon Andersen, for being on this. And yes, everyone should get in touch with you. You are a phenomenal being. And
Thank you.
thank you for showing up today.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time. And my goal and my purpose in life now is to inspire, motivate, and help people see that, that they're, whatever they think may be a problem, it's a blessing in disguise. They just don't.
That's it. Just hang on. Your story's not over yet.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.